Introduced in 2011, Smith Wesson Governor helped redefine the revolver world and took some glory away from the tourist judge. Not that a revolver that could fire a .45 Colt cartridge was uncommon, but introducing another one that could fire .410 shotgun ammunition, .45 Colt ammunition, and the .45 automatic Colt pistol cartridge was still out of the ordinary. Stemming from this introduction, many questions were asked, with probably the primary one being, why? The tourist judge had been in production since 2006 and was highly successful in sales. Due to that popularity, Smith & Wesson produced its own version, the Governor. Regardless of the brand, my response to the production of both came down to the 5WH method of questioning. What, who, where, when, why, and how? I'm going to put some context to these questions, but first, the basics. Let me begin with adding context to the what of the 5WH line of questioning. What is the Smith & Wesson Governor? The Governor is an extra-large framed handgun, what Smith & Wesson calls the X-frame. That is essentially a stretched-out L-frame, which, if you are not familiar with Smith & Wesson established frame sizes, means next to nothing to you, but basically it means that the Governor is a very large handgun. Although available in black, this specimen is stainless steel with a matte finish. Now, according to Smith & Wesson,
versatile and lightweight, the Smith & Wesson Governor revolver puts 6 rounds of customizable response under your control. Load with 410 2.5-inch shot shells, .45 automatic Colt pistol or .45 Colt, and hit your target in every situation. Plus, it's from the leading expert in revolver manufacturing over the past 159 years. That's confidence. Each Governor is packaged with 2 full moon clips and 3 2-shot moon clips for use with .45 automatic Colt pistol cartridges. A moon clip is a ring-shaped or star-shaped piece of metal designed to hold multiple cartridges together as a unit for simultaneous insertion and extraction from a revolver cylinder.
Governor also adds versatility by chambering the .45 ACP in addition to the now standard .410 and .45 Colt. Using full moon clips as speed loaders, the .45 ACP gives the Governor the fastest reloads of this entire class of revolvers. It also makes the Governor capable of shooting everything from .410 snake shot to budget-priced .45 ACP hardball to thundering 255 grain, 950 feet per second .45 Colt, all loaded within the cylinder as a combination, thanks to the 2 full moon clips and 3 2-shot moon clips for use with the .45 ACP. Please note that I am not going to be making comparisons between the Smith & Wesson Governor and the Taurus Judge. Although making such a comparison between the two revolvers, Governor needs to stand on its own merits, or demerits, if applicable. The 2 3/4 inch barrel says that the governor was intended for up-close and dirty work. In fact, Smith Wesson even stated that the governor was intended for use to prevent carjackings and other close personal defense work. I don't know what they, Smith & Wesson, were thinking at the time. They did get one part right. It is an up-close and personal use firearm. Regardless, let's take a closer look at the governor. The barrel is nicely formed affair, complete with an undershroud to protect the ejection rod, and topped off with a fixed ramp front sight with a replaceable plastic insert. Rather than the barrel and barrel housing being the same, the barrel and its housing are separate units, nicely integrated with the other to appear as a single unit. The barrel is nicely crowned, thus protecting that big hole one sees at the muzzle end. The barrel housing is integrated into the frame very well for a pleasing look, although it does look out of place when you consider the long frame of the governor. A near full-sight channel on top of the substantial top strap of the frame provides something for the operator to capture that front sight. The cylinder, as you will note, is substantial in both length and girth. The cylinder can hold, as previously mentioned, 6 rounds of 2.5-inch 41 caliber shot shells, 45 Colt, and with proper moon clips, 45 ACP ammunition. The chambers of the cylinder are cut so as not to allow cartridges longer than the 45 Colt to be fired, such as the .454 Capsule. It could prove to be catastrophic to the gun and to the operator due to the extreme case pressures of the .454 Capsule. One important thing to note about the chambers is that while loading can be done very quickly with correctly sized speed loaders for a 45 Colt and with moon clips for the 45 ACP cartridges, they, as well as the .410 shotgun expended shells, are not so efficiently removed from the cylinder. The ejector rod is too short to do so, but is sufficient enough to get expended shot shells moving to the rear for manual extraction. Not to make a pun, but that feature is a shortcoming for a revolver intended for defensive use with a cylinder length such as this one. The governor's cylinder locks into the frame with the traditional cylinder release latch at the rear, and with a spring-loaded ball bearing at the front of the cylinder crane. The ball bearing locks into a detent at the bottom of the ejector shroud. Most other Smith & Wesson revolvers use a spring-loaded plunger that engages the hollow tip of the ejector rod to lock the front of the revolver. Not this one. This might be compared to Ruger's propensity to have the cylinder lock up at the crane. I don't know, and this is supposition on my part. One important thing to consider is the forcing cone to cylinder gap, or the flash gap if you will. Flash gap on this particular gun measured in around 0.04 of an inch. With the face of the cylinder far forward of the trigger, I would say that it would be pretty difficult to get your fingers anywhere near the flash gap, but I would not go as far as to say that it would be impossible. Anything's possible, and we should all be cognizant of finger placement when shooting a revolver. I do recommend a thumb over grip when shooting any revolver, regardless of size, to prevent precious digits from getting in the flash gap vicinity. A thumb over grip also aids in accuracy and control. The hammer and trigger are not any different from that found with other double-action, single-action revolvers. The prominent and serrated hammer spur allows for easy cocking and decocking of the revolver. The trigger is your normal curved, flat-faced with no serrations trigger that begs the first joint of the shooting hand forefinger to engage. The Governor's long pull is deceptively smooth and steady, and it doesn't stack at all. In double action mode, there is a mild staging point and can be felt after one becomes attuned to the trigger. In single action mode, there is a slight amount of over travel after the hammer drops, but it is not bothersome. The grip is a most interesting thing. Here we have a 2 3/4 inch barrel with a stretched out frame and with a grip reminiscent of most K-frame revolvers. Everything, in my mind, about this revolver says that it is out of balance and proportion. Short barrels I am used to, as I am well versed in holding a K-frame size grip. It's what's between the barrel and the grip that throws me off. With that said, the grip is sufficient for holding on to the Governor with a decent length, contour, and girth that would work with most hand sizes. Grip composition seems to be effective in holding the hand in place on the grip, although it is still a challenge when firing the Governor stoked with 2.5 inch, 1/4 ounce slugs rated at 1,550 feet per second, let alone the 250 grain 45 Colt hand-loaded ammunition at around 850 feet per second. As far as appearance, I won't call the Governor ugly, but it does have a definite different look to it. Now, on to the H part of the 5WH questioning technique. How does it shoot? Well, let's find out. With me today, I have some 45 Colt 250 grain lead round nose flat point hand-loaded ammunition, which I thank my son-in-law for providing. I did not want to run cowboy loads to the Governor, as that would be a waste of resources. I needed something with some oomph to it. The hand-loaded ammunition's muzzle velocity has been determined to be around 850 feet per second, which is typical of most over-the-counter 45 Colt ammunition, but is still below the good stuff, like Hornady Critical Defense 45 Long Colt 185 grain jacketed hollow point ammunition that is rated at 920 feet per second at the muzzle. The second load, which is one that I would possibly carry, is a 41 caliber shotgun, 2.5 inch, 1/4 ounce slug, produced by American Tactical, with a rated muzzle velocity at 1,550 feet per second. First up is 45 Colt, so let me get rolling. Something to note here, the barrel grooves of the Governor are cut different than normal barrel rifling, or so I understand. The cuts are milder to allow for better patterning of shot loads, which I am not going to test today. That might come later, because as I mentioned, today is only a primer for relative accuracy and operation. The Smith Wesson Governor is not known for its accuracy. It is, after all, a revolver with a 2 3/4 inch barrel that says it's for up-close and personal work. And with that 2 3/4 inch barrel comes the muzzle flash and recoil that is associated with revolvers of this barrel length. Being a revolver, the side flash from the forcing cone to cylinder gap is always present. which means that to prevent yourself from being injured by the side flash, the governor needs to be as far away from the body as possible when shooting. If you are sitting in a vehicle and need to use the governor, it may take you leaning toward the passenger side of the vehicle while extending the governor outward and away from you to fire. Of course, that could be said about any revolver that you might carry with you in a vehicle. Aside from the muzzle and side flash and recoil, there is also the danger of destroying your hearing when the governor is discharged from an enclosed vehicle. But again, that could be said about not only the governor, but any firearm when shot from an enclosed space. That's not to say that the governor will be insufficient in stopping a threat. The governor is quite capable of stopping threats. The double-action trigger pull is very nice. Not that you would notice during a high-stress situation, like defending yourself from a threat. And the sighting system is very good. Not that you would actually use them during a fast response to a threat. In most cases, you would simply point to center mass and pull the trigger, a natural reflex, by the way, and then let science take its course. Actual sighting and re-pulling of the trigger may follow, or not. In either case, a 250 grain 45 caliber Colt or 41 caliber shotgun 2.5 inch 1/4 ounce slug going to have a serious effect on someone or something attempting to do you harm. While I said that the double-action trigger is good, it is heavy at 11 pounds and 0.25 ounces, but it does feel lighter when shooting than when dry firing. Full weight might be heavy, but it is smooth and the travel very typical of double-action revolvers. While I also said that the Governor has a good set of sights, there is a caveat. They are good if the Governor is pointed at a white target in bright sunlight and you actually use them. Against a dark target at night or even in daytime, front sight is small, black, and useless. The Governor is definitely a point-and-shoot firearm. After a few shots with the Governor, I switched from trying to locate the front sight to just generally aiming and pulling the trigger. A target revolver? The Governor is definitely not, and definitely did better at 15 yards than what I expected. While mild, with the .45 Colt ammunition I was shooting, the difference in felt recoil when shooting .410 slugs was pronounced, as was muzzle blast. Whoever, from Smith Wesson, came up with the idea of shooting the Governor from a vehicle that no doubt would be the situation in which you would shoot it if someone is attempting to carjack your vehicle with you in it, really needs to be taken out and slapped several times. As mentioned, and surprisingly, the result of shooting the Governor was better at 15 yards than at 7 yards with both .45 Colt and .410 shotgun slugs, at least in my hands, although neither was anywhere close to award-winning. A positive was the grip. While it is hand-filling, it feels good and did help to soak up some of the felt recoil. Felt recoil is more of a push than a snap, and my hand felt no worse for wear after shooting the Governor. Although I was wearing my wrist brace for my CTS, I am still a pretty good judge of raw felt recoil while wearing it, and the Governor's felt recoil, not abusive. My personal opinion is that the Governor could use a bit more barrel length, considering the ammunition it can handle. I would also stick to a somewhat solid projectile to shoot out of the Governor. The hollow base .410 slug that I was shooting would make one heck of a defensive load, I must say. Hollow point handgun ammunition would also be effective, for that matter. With this said, let me yak a bit about carrying the Governor. I really cannot imagine any reason carrying a gun this size concealed. Any sensible carry gun will weigh half of the Governor's loaded weight and carry much more firepower. Tiny subcompact 9mm pistols are half the length, half the width, and half the weight of the mighty Governor. Most .410 shotgun revolvers are purchased to be nightstand guns and never carried outside the home. I think that it does have a niche as a backwoods tool for survival hunting and defense against predators, which means a good holster. At 30 ounces loaded, a reinforced carry belt is needed. The Governor would work best as a wilderness gun in a pancake holster or even a cross-draw. There are many holsters and many configurations available for the Governor, so do your research and you will find the best carry rig for you. Ever wonder what it takes to govern? Well, taking a look at the word itself, it is found that the word govern is an intransitive verb. Its meaning includes such things as to make and administer the public policy and affairs of a state, for example, exercise sovereign authority over, to control the speed or magnitude of, regulate. Some examples are a valve that governs fuel intake. Then we have to control the actions or behavior of, such as govern yourselves like civilized people. Also, there is to keep under control, restrain. For example, a student who could not govern his impulses. Add to the definition, there is to exercise a deciding or determining influence on, as with, chance usually governs the outcome of a game. In addition, we have to require a specific morphological form of accompanying words, to exercise political authority, to have or exercise a determining influence, to exercise authority, to administer the laws, to have the control. To have the control means that to govern, one must have a governor. The Smith Wesson governor, in my line of thought, is that it is not an outstanding revolver, but it is different. If you like big bore revolvers, or if you're looking for a versatile backwoods firearm, or one to, as Smith Wesson states its purpose as, prevent a carjacking, the governor might be the right one for you. When first introduced, the MSRP for the governor was around $599. Today, it's more like $999 for the blue model and $939 for the silver model. That's a chunk of change for what I would consider a specialty firearm. In its defense, in these days of polymer frames and investment cast slides, we rarely see frame components fit together with the extreme precision as shown with the governor. Yes, there is that tiny hairline crack where the side plate fits into the frame, but I can live with that. As a comparison, the governor is much more refined and accurate than the Taurus Judge revolvers that I have handled and shot. The governor has a feel of quality and durability that many Taurus revolvers are lacking. It is a fun gun to shoot, and I would say with no matter what you load it with. Although that is supposition on my part, as I have not spent an extensive amount of time with different ammunition. Well, it's time to end this chapter in the Range Ronin Chronicles. While not an exhaustive review, I hope that at least gave you food for thought if you are considering the governor, or maybe even a Taurus Judge, as I always recommend that you do your research, and if possible, shoot them before you consider the purchase of one. With a fond farewell, I hope that you will come back and sit another spell to watch my other reviews. Until that time, take care of yourself, be vigilant, armed, and safe out there.